Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to Monorail Monday. This is going to be the season 4 finale, episode number 28. Remember, we got 2 bonus episodes. This is the second bonus episode for the season. This is going to be the finale of season 4 of Monorail Monday, your behind-the-scenes stories and operational information on working at Walt Disney World years and years ago when I was there. We are going to take a little break, as we always do. This one, I'm thinking I'm going to look at 2 months, take March off, and April. We will return with Monorail Monday in May. Specific date to be announced, but we will return in May for another season of Monorail Monday. So we will be back for a little more. Also, in addition to more stories, brand new for Monorail Monday next season, I have two special guests lined up to come on and guest on Monorail Monday, and we'll talk to them and get a little information about some of their stories of working at Walt Disney World. For this first particular story, before I get into the checklist stuff, I'm going to talk about Monorail Yellow. Many of you may know Monorail Yellow, kind of a problem child, at least for me. Every time I drove it, we seem to run into little issues. Little issues, big issues. There are always some little issues. I often joke you had to shoot Old Yeller at the end of the movie and suggested we do the same to the monorail. So Monorail Yellow was on the exterior beam going to Contemporary, and then it was basically going to the Magic Kingdom station through the Contemporary. It had a problem at the top of the hill before entering Contemporary, and they needed a tow tractor to come out and tow it off of the beamway. So that's no problem. They got the train out there. In the meantime, the monorail behind it has pulled into the transportation center. So that monorail is in the transportation and ticket center. They've unloaded guests, but are not yet loading. Many times we didn't want to load the monorail up if we were going to be waiting a little while for something like a train to be towed off of the beamway, or if there was some other issue that it wasn't clear we're going to be going right away. We would often avoid loading the train. There's no point in piling everybody up in the train and cramming everybody together to wait 10 or 15 minutes for something to happen. So very, very common for us to just hold off loading. This monorail sitting in the transportation center. Up at the top of the hill, Monorail Yellow is getting hooked up to the tractor. In order to tow the monorail, they need to hook up. There's a tow arm at the front of the monorail. They would hook that up to the tow tractor, and they would bleed the air out of the brakes in order to make sure that the monorail moved. The default for the monorail, with most problems, whether it was doors or power systems or things like that, it would automatically, the brakes would come on and just keep the monorail stopped right there. So in order to move the monorail with a tow tractor, you need to connect the tow arm, make sure it's connected, and then you bleed the air out of the brakes. Now you can tow it anywhere around the system. Now on this particular day, I cannot recall specifically, but either the tow arm was not properly connected, or some piece of the tow arm broke off. So they thought the monorail was connected. They bled the air out of the brakes, and then the monorail became disconnected from the tow tractor. And because it was on the hill, it started sliding back down the hill and gaining momentum as it went down the hill and through the straightaway towards the transportation and ticket center. Now remember, we have a monorail in the transportation and ticket center right now, and we also have a monorail at the hold point behind it, which is just outside of the Polynesian, would be the last hold point before the transfer. So you've got trains kind of backed up behind this what was going to be towed train. So the scramble immediately becomes, get everybody back up, everybody back up. They're telling the train furthest back. I think there was a train in Magic Kingdom, so you only had one train in the Magic Kingdom, one train at the hold point for transportation center, one train at the transportation center, and one being towed. So immediately instructions go out very quickly to those 2 trains, back up. The train at the last hold point needed back up a full hold point. They're getting those trains backed up as fast as they can because now they have an out of control monorail yellow racing towards the station. And normally you could just kill power. Kill power and you basically stop any monorail dead in their tracks. This train, however, is just traveling on momentum. There's no power. It's you could hit e-stop. There's no air in the brakes. Power is not going to kill it because it's just riding along without power, just coming downhill on momentum. So there was a huge scramble to get the doors closed up on the train in the station, get the monorail at the hold point to back up so the monorail at the transportation center can get these trains out of the way because we don't know where monorail yellow is going to stop. This all happened in just seconds, mere seconds. This stuff is happening immediately. And that is, you've got a combination of Monorail Central, who is like the voice in the skies, the air traffic controller, if you will, of the monorail system, and especially the fact that they're towing a train means everybody's very aware of where the other trains are. You have to be aware of where those trains are. You have to position them in order to tow a train on and off the system. So at the point in time, they knew where everybody was, and between Monorail Central and the lead at what we called base, that was a transportation center, was basically called Monorail Base. Basically, between those two and drivers, they got the trains backed up and out of the way. And here comes Monorail Yellow. And Monorail Yellow came to a stop. I think it came to a stop short of the transportation center. I don't think it actually entered the station. It finally came to a stop near the station. But when it's barreling down the hill with no brakes, you don't know where it's going to stop. And that was pretty scary, pretty crazy. And everybody's just acting really fast because you absolutely don't want two trains colliding. But they did back that train out, and everybody survived. But it was pretty scary and pretty crazy, and a tribute to the very experienced drivers and central people in place that ultimately that ended up being okay. The work tractor basically rehooked up to the tow arm, and they were able to eventually tow Monorail Yellow away. Now let's talk about monorail checklists and getting a monorail started in the morning. So before I get too started, I just want to show you, this is a Mark IV monorail checklist, and I'm going to, I'll get a little closer shot of it here for you. And this is what the checklist would be used. There's a similar one for Mark VI, and we will be discussing that in just a second, but I wanted to show you the Mark IV version just to see it's a little bit different. You know, it's got a lot of console switches and the console meters and things like that you would be checking over. The horn, radio checks, checking the power to the motors, checking the headlights, checking the strobe lights, basically making sure all the lights on the train are working, all the lights on the console are working. You can hit test switch and see that everything lights up. Just making sure that everything is working. If something is not working or does not light up like it's supposed to, basically call maintenance, have them come check it out, figure out what's going on. These checks would also be done twice a day. Once in the morning, and then in the afternoon, you're supposed to basically go through this checklist again, make sure all these things are still working. Yes. So you would fill out this sheet twice a day. The opener, who picked up the train, whether in shop or at one of the hotels or transportation center, wherever they started up, would fill this out once they powered the train up. And then they would do it again in the middle of the day. Typically, it was like, it might be 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30. They tried to usually do it before the parade exit, and usually by 3:30 you were seeing a heavy rush out of the Magic Kingdom to the parade. Usually tried to get these checks done before that happened, so before the crowds start building up for the exit for the Magic Kingdom. Let's talk about Mark VI monorail, and that's the current one on the system right now. And here is the checklist. It's a little slightly different. They've gone to a more horizontal look here on this checklist, but you still have the spots here for first and second checks. Still checking twice a day. Still checking for the cabs. Now, they've got a spot on here for cab 1 and cab 6. If you're on the express beam, exterior beam, you're driving out of cab 1, usually. If you are on the resort beam, or lagoon as we called it, you are operating out of cab 6. You can drive either direction on either beam, but you'd fill out cab 6 if you were driving out of cab 6, and if you're in cab 1, you'd fill it out under cab 1. So they got first and second checks there. On the back of this, to start off in the back, we got some malfunction notes. So if there were any particular problems with that train, especially if it was a recurring issue, door, car 1, door 3, left side, not closing periodically, not closing properly, needs to be recycled or something like that. It's something that's usually popping up a little bit. You might note that there. There's also driver responsibility. And theoretically, you would put your name and time in here. Yeah, nobody was ever, I don't recall filling that out all the time. So you can see here we got inside checks, upper display and lower command console, warning alarms reply, 14 switch lights illuminate, the 8 malfunction indicators illuminate, door status indicators illuminate, lots of different lights illuminating, make sure your console is all illuminating as it's supposed to. The test switch activates the self-test. If you are in shop, you'll check to make sure that you've got 85 pounds of pressure when you get a MAPO stop. You have the CMPAS system, which was the audio, which was basically on a cart tapes. Eventually that switched to a compact disc. And then eventually after that, it's now all digital. Doors recycling. The warning tones, make sure that those light up as expected. Intercom phones. Basically, you're supposed to be able to check and make sure the intercoms worked with every single car. They have the outside checks, headlights, beacon lights, color indicator, and strobe light. Always got to make sure that those are on so that the train in front of you or behind you can see your train illuminated, see your strobe. It was an easy way to spot a train, especially at night when it might be harder to see in certain areas. You could see that blinking strobe behind a train and have a pretty good idea, know exactly where that it was. And although they don't teach a lot of that stuff now, it's the driver's ability to operate the train manually has largely been removed. So a lot of that stuff doesn't apply anymore. But at the time it was all very, you had to know exactly where all the other trains are on the system. You had to know immediately where are you clear to based on where that train is. And then there were also some spur or mainline checks, basically make sure that this train will not move with a door alert, or that it will not move when there's no power, things like that. So every morning you would complete this, whether you were starting out from shop or starting the train up in the Magic Kingdom or starting the train up in the Contemporary. They were parked in different places around the system. We go through these and check and make sure that everything is working. And in the morning, it really depended on what the hours were. Mornings could start as soon as, say, 6 a.m. Sometimes if it was earlier, it might be 5 a.m. that the trains would get started and you'd have the first drivers arriving, depending on what time the parks are going to be opening. And basically, the first drivers would be dropped off via the van. Y'all clock in, and then a van would go around and drop, a lead and a driver off at the Grand Floridian, drop somebody off at the Magic Kingdom, and just drop off those people who are going to be starting operating the station and operating the trains. And basically start up, power to the station, check with Central, make sure that everything is operating, start up the trains, run through the checklist, make sure those are okay, and wait for Monorail Central to start issuing instructions, because inevitably there would be a couple of trains that are coming from Monorail Shop back onto the system. You have to wait for those to all get set up and position everything so that you're ready to go to start the morning. All this would take, it could take an hour, hour and a half or so, depending on if there are any problems, going through various checks and where the trains happen to be, where they were supposed to be going, and if maintenance had to look at anything. So that's just a quick look at the checklist that we use to start up the trains every morning and double check things in the afternoon. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, sharing, telling your friends, commenting on the videos. Hope you've enjoyed Season 4 of Monorail Monday. There is more to come. Remember, Monorail Monday will return for a 5th season, season 5, another batch of episodes in May, and we are going to have at least 2 special guests come on and tell us a little bit of some of their stories of working at Disney, maybe their behind the scenes information or silly stories. So it's going to be more fun to come. Also coming up on the channel, we've got some Disneyland stuff from our recent trip to Disneyland coming up pretty soon. And probably we'll have a couple of more of the travel talks and talk a little bit about my time working as a flight attendant, things like that. So we will have some fun stuff to fill the gaps until Monorail Monday returns. Thanks for watching, and remember kids, have a good time all the time.